What is ASA and when did you use it? So you should be very familiar with this now. A is going to be angle. S is going to be side. So that's the included side between the angles. And then A is also going to be angle. So what is angle, side, angle, and when do we use it? This is for task 6.9. That should be the title at the top of the paper. Okay, here's a reminder of what your notes should look like, and this is video title number 3 in this series of videos for task 6.9. Here's our next postulate that we're going to discuss, and this time we're talking about angle, side, angle. So I'm going to go ahead and write that on the side here, angle, side, angle. And we're going to see if these two triangles are congruent by comparing the angles and the sides and the other angles. So let's take a look at the angles. We have angle A is congruent to angle X. So angle A is congruent to angle X. This is just the shorthand version of me writing this, but you can also go ahead and write it in terms of being in between the Z, X, Y, and then the C, A, B. For the sides, we have side AB is congruent to side XY. Notice how this side that we're looking at here, the AB and the XY, that side is in between two angles because it's the included angle. That's why the S is right here in the middle of the two A's. And then we also have angle B is congruent to angle Y. So angle B is congruent to angle Y. Now because we have an angle, a side, and an angle that is congruent to each other from the two triangles, we can then conclude that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle XYZ by the statement angle, side, angle, or the postulate angle, side, angle. And here's the more formal definition, angle, side, angle postulate. If two angles and the included side of one triangle are congruent to two angles and the included side of another triangle, then the two triangles are congruent. So these two are congruent to each other because of angle, side, angle, angle, side, angle. Notice that the side is included or in between the two angles. I'm going to go ahead and highlight that word included. A lot of students that I've seen over the past years get confused by that included part. It must be included in between the angles, or the angle must be included between the sides. Okay, here's our one example for this section. We're going to write a flow proof to prove that triangle APX, this one, is congruent to triangle BPY. And so I already set up my boxes and I'm ready to begin, and hopefully you're ready to follow along. So we're going to use, since we're talking in this video about angle, side, angle, we already have an indication kind of what we're going to use. And I can already kind of tell from my picture that this is going to come in handy. And that's because I've had a lot of experience with it. So I'm going to go ahead and set it up, show you how to set it up. Since we're going to use angle, side, angle, and I figured out what postulate I'm going to use, I went ahead and drew that at the top. Now what I'm going to write in the boxes is what is true of the picture. So we have that angle A is congruent to angle B. Why do we know that? Well, that's given. And notice since I was talking about angles, I wrote that underneath the A box. Then we were also given that the sides are congruent. And they've already marked up our picture for us, right? They show that these two are congruent and then these two are congruent. So then AP is congruent to BP. And how do we know this? It was given to us. So some information needs to be given to us in order for us to use deductive reasoning. And then let's talk about the last angle. So here is one of the angles, and here's a side, and here is another angle, and here's a side. Remember that the side must be in between the two angles that we're going to talk about. So I'm going to go ahead and cross out the Y because we can't talk about that angle or the angle X. The only other angle to talk about is angle P, and if you notice, angle P is congruent to each other by vertical angles, and the side is in between those two angles that we are supposed to have for angle, side, angle. So the last thing we want to say is that angle P is congruent to angle P. And what is our reasoning for that? That's what goes below the box. That is because of vertical angles. Notice that it makes a cross there. Right there. So like that, since we have it as the X, they're vertical angles, and we can know that they are congruent to each other. So then our final thing is what we wanted to prove. We can now say that angle APX is congruent to triangle PY. And this is by angle, side, angle. So that's our last reasoning. And you could draw your arrows so you know that we're flowing to the same conclusion. Remember, rewatch the video if you had difficulty. Bring all your questions to class.